This episode of the EV Resource Podcast is brought to you by Oasis Charging, offering commercial and residential customers comprehensive EV charging solutions with a consultative approach. For more information and to schedule a free consultation, go to oasischarging.com. Coming up this week,
even with the existing number of EVs on the road, if no other EVs got sold, there is still a market for EV charging stations. And the more that people see, the more driving EVs becomes normalized, and then they're more likely to say, maybe I should check that out if everybody else is.
Well, hello, friends, and welcome to episode 207 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zack Hurst, and this episode, I actually am joined by John Hurst, EV owner and enthusiast, and Andy Cooper, who's also an EV owner and enthusiast and a member of the Electric Vehicle Association of DC. And we're going to go over 2025 and what the EV world has been, primarily focusing on the US and North American market, but certainly I expect we'll touch on some global trends as well. This is an end of year recap. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Hello.
Before we started, I think we were touching on a really, really good starting point, and that's just what people are seeing and feeling related to the EV market. Andy, I'll let you kind of lead off. What are your general impressions about how the EV market is currently, and maybe what 2025 what has happened generally in the marketplace for the year?
Yeah. Well, I'll just speak to the U.S. market. We're in a rough patch. We're starting down kind of like the worst part, I would say, given the next year and a half. But a lot of policies, of course, have changed in 2025 that are, we'll say, it is producing quite a bad bias towards EVs. Of course, going up to October, where the policies have expired, all the benefits towards EVs. Going into October and ending October, that was a stellar time, and now we're seeing quite the opposite after the end of October. Kind of what we're going to be feeling for the probably next year and a half. And I think the bright side of that, or the silver lining to it, will be the used market. If you are into an EV and want to get into one, it's probably going to be a fantastic way to go, or an alternative for yourself, because all those leases that have been existing since 2022, 2023, all those are coming into the used market now. And so that's going to be, I would say, just from a car buying perspective as a whole, doesn't matter if you're going gas or EV, the EVs are going to be some of the best deals that you have for the next year and a half, until, say, policies improve or the whole market just kind of levels off and works with the new changes.
Sure. And certainly there was a big change that affected consumer behavior that happened around that time with the big, beautiful bill ending the EV tax credit. Affordability is certainly something that a lot of people consider. So a used EV is definitely going to fit the budget for more American households, I would expect.
In general, the vibe I'm getting from people that I've been talking to has been, well, originally, I would say maybe around the beginning of the year or previously, it was such that people were saying, do I get a hybrid car? Do I get a full EV? Well, I could see myself going either way, and I might be leaning towards hybrid. Now I think that has really solidified under the area of, I'm going to get a hybrid and not get an EV, because I think there's still apprehension over where do I charge, what's different about an EV that I don't know about, just this fear of the unknown, and that EVs are something that's so different compared they're used to in the gas world, and I don't necessarily agree with that. Not that there aren't some things to learn in terms of uh, charging infrastructure. What if you have but I think people are just afraid of what's different, and there hasn't been enough of a push by the industry overall in order to get people to be more comfortable with EVs.
Okay, so I had a thought while you were talking, possibly a controversial uh, thought or opinion. If more people are focused on buying hybrids, I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Say more.
here's where I'm thinking. Generally, we know, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, that we're trying to bridge the gap between the early adopters and the enthusiasts and the mass market early majority. Well, in order to be able to do that, the biggest hurdles you have to get through are education, fear, to your point, John, of the unknown, um, experience. Well, most hybrids on the market today have the ability to get full EV mode, right? And might be for a mile or two,
Yeah.
low speed or whatever, but a lot of them are going to operate without the gas engine on at some point. That's what sold me on electric vehicles back 8, 9 years ago, right? I had a Prius. It wasn't even the
Mm-hmm.
plug-in Prius, but that little EV button that would allow me to go like a mile under 25 miles an hour. Um, I fell in love with that and I wanted more of it. And so it was just planting that little seed. So I think if we have the opportunity to push more people forward towards adopting EVs, then ideally plug-in hybrids, but maybe that's a
Like hybrid might be a good intermediate step.
exactly. If like obviously if we could sell full EVs to people, but if we sell an EV to somebody who isn't ready, they're more likely to have a negative experience with the unknown and what's uncertain and get
Yeah, yeah.
frustrated and try to figure out. And the data doesn't show that people who get an EV go back to a nice vehicle, but also the people that have been buying EVs are more likely to have done all of the research and learn everything that they can where we are now. So I don't think that maybe it's a bad thing. And I certainly don't think that we should judge the marketplace by EV sales. And I know that's
Mm-hmm.
like, what else are you going to judge it by? But I mean, generally, it's the conversations. It's not something that can be measured necessarily.
Mhm.
Well, and I think that once people have a hybrid for a while in it, and you can say, how many times did your battery need replaced in the last 10 years? Oh, zero? Then what are you afraid of within a full battery
Mhm.
EV?
And there's actually a lot of data to back that up with all the Toyota that varies less, typically I think like 100 150k. So I mean, from that perspective, I've always used the Prius as, a way to convince people who have that concern in the back of their mind of, Priuses have been doing it. You don't hear
Yeah.
about Priuses having to go into the shop at like 50k or 80k and have their battery replaced. I mean, it does happen, but usually it's on the upper or 100. It starts happening around the 100k mark, 120k.
Mm-hmm. And battery technology has improved so much since
Yeah.
then
Oh yeah.
that that number is going to the number of miles before a battery needs replacement is I don't have data, but it's very likely already substantially higher than what you're saying with Priuses that are a
Even more
decade plus
modern
old.
day Priuses. Yeah. Who knows
So
what
Yeah,
if
they're.
yeah.
you want data, John, And anybody else that wants data when it comes to battery replacements, I would definitely encourage you to look into Recurrent. They have hundreds of thousands of EVs that they have gathered data from, and they looked at the occurrence of battery replacements across the whole spectrum of EVs. And what they're seeing is most of the battery replacements that have happened are with the first generation of EVs from each manufacturer. The second generation, that number dropped. And at the third generation, the latest vehicles and technology that we're working with now, the number is less than 1% of EV batteries are needing to be replaced.
Wow.
Now, certainly that could be argued is because the latest generation of EVs hasn't aged long enough for that to happen. But you could also argue that there are so many more of them on the road than the previous ones that I think we're seeing the trend go in the right direction. We're going to get past the worry and the fear. I think people are going to fall in love with EVs for all the reasons that we did. Less maintenance, quieter. Eventually, price parity will drop. I mean, we're seeing that, to touch on the global scale. We're seeing that in China right now. There really isn't that much of a delta between the price for an ICE vehicle or a full EV. In Europe, we've seen that gap close significantly. Both of those markets have had soaring numbers of sales this year. Globally, EV adoption has risen 23% in 2025. And that's with the US market actually dipping very slightly towards the latest reports that I've seen. Now, obviously, Q4 has yet to show, but I wouldn't be surprised if things calmed a little bit towards the end of the year without the incentive. So
yeah.
Is it all doom and gloom? No. I think things there's a lot to get excited about. I wish the automakers would be communicating that more.
If I can take the opportunity also to apologize to Recurrent, because I did send an email yelling at them, why isn't the GB60, my car, showing up on Recurrent? It's actually probably a problem with Genesis and not Recurrent. So apologies to Recurrent there.
So a lot of automakers have been uncertain on how to respond to massive policy shifts that we've seen this year. We've had a number of announcements where certain models are being discontinued. The one that I think really hit a lot of people as a shock was Ford basically announcing that they're ending the current production, or pausing, I think might be a better way of putting it, the production of the F-150 Lightning. We've seen manufacturers continue to offer the range extender version, but end the full battery electric version. What do you guys think is behind maybe some of the sentiment, if you will, of manufacturers and how they're responding? Are they responding to the marketplace genuinely, or do you think perhaps there might be some intentionality behind that to focus on something that is a little bit more profitable, that they have invested all of their research and development in, and EVs are kind of something they've not really wanted to do anyway, but they felt pushed into it?
I think it depends on the manufacturer. Like in some cases, I think they're, especially with the US automakers, which I'm saying loosely because how do you even define that anymore, really? Um, are responding to the current political climate and trying to figure out not going to be incentives and how consumer purchasing behavior change based on what's going on in Washington. And so they're just trying to navigate the environment to say, how can we keep our business model stable when everything keeps changing every 2 seconds, it seems like. But to your point about profitability, I think if you can take one battery EV's worth of battery, split that into two cars that's a hybrid, and be making money off of both of those, then you're going to be ending up with a higher profit. But I think there's probably other ways that automakers are more profitable by sticking with hybrids over battery EVs as well.
Yeah, I think that argument's going away slowly. Actually, in terms of like kind of market trends, it's relatively fast given the battery manufacturing is coming on so strong now everywhere.
Hmm.
Not so much in the U.S. I mean, we still have a couple of plants that are still going in. I think GM is doing some things, and so is Panasonic. Uh, but yeah, I mean, certainly is still a valid argument to say that hybrids are okay. I'll just go on the record, and I think we all feel like this. Like, I think of it from an efficiency point of view. Like, someone's going to invest in a car. Um, I'd rather them get the maximum amount for their money. Just in terms, like, I feel like if they do invest in the hybrid for the comfort of it, I totally understand that. I just feel like it'll just take a little bit of practice from them, and certainly people who get hybrids, they tend to probably learn that the experience of the EV side of the car. Uh, I have convinced people to do the leapfrog directly to the full. I just look at it from a efficiency standpoint. I'd love to do the leapfrog. Reality is that we're going to have to live through a period of e-revs and hybrids to get people comfortable with the concepts. Certainly during this period of this administration, until things we can shift later to be more EV centric.
Yeah.
And I'm just presenting that as like a possible counter argument to the very valid argument of you take a full BEV, you split its battery across a couple of hybrids, and you basically get two cars for one. That's my counterpoint to that.
So before we continue with things, I do want to apologize to people who might be watching or listening. My internet connection apparently is being taxed by the children upstairs and their games and watching things. So as both of you have been talking, and I'm sure from your perspective, it's come across from my end too. It's laggy and glitchy a little bit. So I'm going to try to keep things without editing in the video, the published version, but there is going to be some glitchiness to it, and unfortunately I don't think anything can be done about it at this point, so we'll just continue on. But the main points that you all are making, I think, is coming through. So it is what it is. I've got gig speed FiOS, like you'd expect that it would be fantastic, but clearly it's not. So, or at least right now it isn't. It's certainly feeling the load. When it comes to what consumers want, and John, you were mentioning this a little bit before we hit record. I think the argument can be made that consumers want what they are told that other people want. So when it comes to looking ahead and choosing between a full battery electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid or a range extender or a hybrid that doesn't plug in, people are choosing one of those options more than they were choosing just a straight internal combustion engine vehicle. But I think how they're deciding on which of those to land on has a lot to do with external factors, not necessarily choosing what might be the best tool for their lifestyle.
I've mentioned it before, but the reason why I went full battery EV is because I didn't want the cost of ownership to be as high as it had been with even a Honda Civic ICE car. And so, and I swear, like in the last 3 years of owning that Spark, I've put tires on it. I replaced a windshield. That's pretty much it. I don't think I've done much more than that. Rear wiper. Haven't needed to. It's been fine. So, I mean, that's why I went with the EV. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, they're so expensive. And I'm like, well, actually, do my whole mansplaining bit there. So, yeah.
I'll jump on the opportunity to mention to people that the EV resource Chevy Spark EV that anybody who's been around following me for 5 years has known plenty about the ups and the downs. Was sold to John in, what was that, 2022 January, I think.
Yeah.
3 years ago.
About December 2022, January 2023.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
Been 3 years.
John, we are in the process of buying that back from John so that my daughter Bailey can use that as her first car. So we're keeping it in the family, and it's getting returned. For the time being, it's in my driveway, which, just knowing that it's sitting out there, it puts a smile on my face. It's like I personally haven't had an EV that I consider to be my car since selling that to John. We've got the Model 3, of course, but personally, I've been going through withdrawal, I think. So, yeah, it's good to have it back, at least for a little bit, in the driveway until Bailey can take it and then drive that. But I've already gotten her to promise the same thing, John, that I got you to promise, is that she's not selling that car to anybody else, that when she's done with it, or it's done with her, it's coming back. So yeah, I've got plans for the powertrain when whatever happens with that car, whether she's done with it or it just decides that it's done. The motor and everything is going to be used for sure for some sort of project. But
I love that. Like,
yeah, it's
I'm telling you, even when the chassis gives up the ghost, or some part breaks that GM doesn't want to source and you can't get a replacement from junkyard or something, like that's going to be an amazing drivetrain to put into an EV conversion. It's going to be incredible. Like that car, I mean, even with that front wheel drive chassis, it is such a fun car. Like 327 pound-feet of torque in an itty bitty car. I mean, that thing weighs 2,900 pounds, is amazing. And like, I just bought, for anybody who doesn't know, a 2001 Miata, pristine condition. The thing's awesome. And jumping between the two cars, I almost couldn't decide which I thought was more fun to drive, because the Spark has such a low center of gravity because the battery and all of that torque immediately available and always in the right gear, versus a stick shift rear, which by all accounts is drive. I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of, so of course all the Miata people are going blasphemy, and I'm like, what? Try driving the Spark.
So
yeah, I'm gonna miss it.
I believe I've had Raj on the podcast before. And certainly I know Raj is listening to this right now. So if I haven't, then maybe I don't want to share this, but I'm going to. Raj and I were talking recently, John, about the same thing you and I were talking about. An EV roadster like a Miata, something that's lightweight, spunky.
If Mazda sold a battery electric Miata that was less than 3,000 pounds, I would probably have gotten that instead of the 2001 that I did get, but they don't yet, so I'm just going to have to be patient. And in the meantime, we'll drive the Ice Miata.
The world isn't ending. The sky isn't falling. I think consumers are reacting to what they're being told, not thinking for themselves. which, I mean, you could say that about a lot of things, but certainly with EVs in general. The three of us, have talked about the potential concern or opportunity, depending on what side you land on, of China and Chinese manufacturers entering the North American market. One thing I think is a certainty is that that happening is inevitable. What do you think about the manufacturers pulling back slightly, uh, and how it relates to potentially the inevitability of Chinese EVs being on US roads? Is this going to hurt things long term, or do you think that it might not make any difference at all?
Personally, I think it's too early to tell. I think it could go a number of different ways, but then again, that's not a subject that I've been digging into a whole heck of a lot, but I'm interested to see where things go.
Yeah, I say it's a little too early. We are seeing, in my opinion, some direction going, or should say, I guess some of their strategies changing slowly towards the wrong direction, in my opinion. We mentioned this earlier. Ford canceling the F-150. However, they have their Skunk Works. I think there's going to be good things coming from that. GM, if they continue down the course they're going, like they actually have a good selection of vehicles. If they continue with those vehicles and they continue to improve them, maybe we won't be too far behind. As far as like Stellantis goes in the US, I know that they have stuff over in Europe, but they're not bringing it over here. They are deliberately going backwards. So I suspect in the US market, Stellantis will in a decade be gone unless they have some major turnaround. So that's just the three domestic manufacturers here, in my opinion, of those three. So it is a little too early to tell, except for maybe Stellantis. Their offerings here are poor, and that's just my opinion. And it feels like they're entering into the EV market products of like maybe 2020, and eventually we're getting surrounded by China. Canada, I think, will certainly entertain the possibility, kind of a protected wall for us as well. And we're accepting China EVs, but given our relations and how that's changed, I think China is going, China EVs are going to be a real possibility in Canada. So we're effectively surrounded. BYD and everybody is in Mexico.
Yep.
They're in South America. And I don't see why Canada would say, well, we don't have these American partners anymore. Why don't we just go to what's to our advantage? I do think some of the younger generation, although they aren't as interested in cars, will see what the possibilities are out there. They'll see modern, very advanced cars coming in from China, and they'll be asking, why don't we have these here? Why is our auto market so behind, the curve as far as technological capability and all that stuff goes? So
I think it's going to be politicians that end up bringing up the idea of us being behind other countries when it comes to EVs or any other technology. I think people are going to end up getting their news from politicians in that regard. It a lot really does revolve around to where if China is to come into this market with BYD or other makers, if incentives for consumers for purchasing EVs, if there are tariffs put in place or other protections put in place related to import of raw materials or parts from other places, if we're not able to take advantage of lithium mines in this country or whatever else, then the world is going, well, for us in the United States, is going to look a lot different than if China is allowed to come in to which the automakers might respond to positive sales numbers from BYD. Maybe we should make more EVs, and because people are buying them, because follow the money. The manufacturers are going to do what makes the money. Done.
Yeah.
And so yeah, if pieces are put in policy that the environment for EVs more, I think sold. If they're not, then we won't.
Yeah,
Okay.
the argument behind ending the EV tax credit was about giving consumers choice, removing any kind of mandate, and ultimately let the customer choose what they want to drive. Which I can't help but point out the irony that, on one hand we're saying give choice, and then on the other hand going the extra mile to prevent that choice from being
Right.
allowed just because it didn't originate from a company that has been historically based in the United States. And I say it that way specifically because Ford is a global company. GM is a
Mm-hmm.
global company. Yes, they have their headquarters, at least for the US, here, but
Mhm.
there are so many partnerships and supply chain complications, I guess is the best word
American
I can come
company.
up with right now, that automakers, I mean, China being the exception because they have been kind of standing on their own, like China against the rest of the world for such a long time when it came to EVs. um I, I think it's easy to spot hypocrisy in policy, and most consumers aren't paying attention or care about what they drive. Like, if they knew how to use it, most consumers would choose an EV. Those of us who have been in the EV world and owned EVs and driven EVs know that. Like, there's not a doubt in my mind that if people knew what they were like, they would choose them. But the percentage of people that are curious about EVs, it feels like that has diminished quite a bit. So without that natural curiosity, John, to your point, they're going to rely on what they're told. And if they're told, oh, well, people don't really want EVs, they
Mhm.
want this other stuff over here, um, then that's what people are going to hear and go, well, if everybody else wants this stuff, then that's what I want too. Um, the
Proof positive that consumers will buy what they're told they want.
Yeah,
Like Apple's been doing that for years.
true. So Apple needs to bring back their uh, uh, the idea of an Apple car that's an EV,
There
and then we're saved. Um,
you go.
I think there's something in, and Andy, I'm going to let you speak to this because this year, you, I would assume, have been much more actively involved in the EV groups
Yeah.
and on the ground level of conversations and events. So I want to lean on that a bit because I think the one way to circumvent what we just said is by using real world EV owners to do the evangelism, if you will.
Mhm.
So if you can just speak to how that has been going in your own experience through EVA DC and some of the events that you guys have had this year, conversations that are being had, and perhaps some of uh, what you've noticed in terms of the average consumer, how they are looking at the options available to them.
Yeah, so this summer we had several events. I will say it was kind of like, uh, you know, when it rained, pours kind of thing. There were one or two events that there was a lot of as far as like other EV events where it was quite quiet and just EV talking amongst themselves. Um, I will say I've noticed out there there are still a ton of EVs, and we've actually much more moved into a commoditized thing where those new EV owners are actually not interested in being advocates. And that's not a bad thing. I will say also that those people, they are the living proof to their neighbors of you can survive on an EV. Like, in fact, you can even, and I think they show that over and over again to their neighbors. And I think that in itself is its own kind of advocacy. We just, at the actual events themselves, it's except for like going into that September timeframe of the tax credits going away. Um, there was a little bit of an uptick in interest at the events, but it kind of leveled back off to what I've seen in the past prior years, where it's just one or two people talking to us a day, and we give them plenty of information. We even kind of steer them towards good options that they might enjoy, depending on what their kind of use case is for that stuff. But overall, it's been kind of slow, given and as the counterpoint to that is like just seeing more on the road and being moved, the EV enthusiasm being moved more into a commoditized kind of attitude about it.
So EVs are becoming normal.
Yeah.
And John, I don't know if that you mentioned this after we started recording or not, but EVs are looking like every other, well, SUV on the road these days.
Right.
So
Yeah.
people who aren't looking out for EVs or familiar with them, they're not seeing them as EVs. They're just seeing them as every other vehicle on the road, which on
Yeah.
one hand is great. That's what we ultimately want. But then also, if you're not seeing it or you're not realizing that you're seeing it, you could be driving next to an EV and not know it. Then you as a consumer aren't going to see how many EVs really are out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Unless you know to look for like the lack of tailpipe or something like that. Some of them do look like normal cars. The most specific ones I can think of is BMW and Audi right off the bat. They kind of just look like they go out of their way to make them look kind of like normal combustion cars. They're not doing anything stylistically to.
The last time I looked at tailpipes was when I was trying to figure out if the Crown Victoria in front of me that was kind of conspicuously marked had two tailpipes, indicating that it was a V8 and possibly a police interceptor model.
Which yeah, gosh, when they go all EV, we're gonna have one heck of a time, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
um so what are you excited about, maybe next year, maybe in the next couple of years, but what, when you look at the EV landscape, and I'm going to open that up to um just alternative fuels and basically anything that's not gas, like straight gas or diesel. Let's open it up and maybe broaden the conversation a little bit. But what do you look forward to that's coming down the line, maybe?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know if this is a direct answer to your question, but I just came back from a trip. I did an 8-hour trip from the Virginia area down to Knoxville, essentially. And so I went down Route 81. And so I'm just stipulating that because this is not representative across the country. But on the way back, I left at 2 o'clock in the morning. And because I just wasn't sleeping, I was like, well, I might as well be driving if I'm going to drive back home.
Sure.
So one of the things that kind of occurred to me was, yeah, I had planned out my route and I could have done it in 2-3 stops, maybe, charge stops to get back home. And the thing that I was like, well, what if I'm tired right now? What would be my options to charge while I'm sleeping? And I kept hitting the EV button on my car, and there were always 2 to 3 options anywhere I was along the entire route. It's
Nice.
getting to the level of less thinking. The only thing that's lacking is the signs on the side of the road that say EV charge here. But I mean, I drive a Genesis, which is the Hyundai brand. They are not very, we'll say, people are disappointed in their routing capability, which totally understand. But if you hit that button, that EV like charge location button, and you just look to see what's available, there was nothing beyond 50 miles. And so that's a huge milestone in my book, and it's only going to get better.
When you say nothing beyond 50 miles, to clarify, you mean that there was nothing that was further, like you were always within 50 miles of a charger?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, that's what I meant. Like that was a bad
Word to the
statement.
wise: don't drive a Spark EV on Route 81.
Yeah.
50 miles.
Oh,
I'm
crap.
dead.
And often within 30 miles range
Yeah.
of being able
Okay,
to
that's more
find a
realistic.
place to stop. So yeah, I mean, I thought that was just fantastic to see. So that's one major positive thing, and I think that's just going to get better over time.
Sure.
Given the Ionas, the BP Pulses, the Walmart charging, all those outside of anything dependent on any kind of government boosting, you know, all of that stuff is independent, and it's just going to get better.
Man, I'm so disappointed, Andy. You didn't say Oasis charging. So
I was trying to plan a route for you.
well, it occurs to me, sadly, that this is the first podcast recorded since having the charger up and running officially. So
Congratulations, by the way.
well, yeah. So here's the official podcast announcement that yes, the fast charger the is at Dominion Raceway. It is up and running and available. It has been used, so I know it works.
Right.
And when they are open during business hours and the gates open and you can get to it, sorry, John, that it is there and available. Even if you're coming off the highway, they already are expecting that people are going to come in, drive past the building, plug in, turn around and drive out and not like wave and say hi or anything. It's not going to be something that's weird for them. But yeah, having a charger, to your point, Andy, that there were no government incentives or money outside of the private sector that was involved in getting this to happen.
Mhm.
If I don't know if my partner wants to be named for for his significant help and contribution, but if we can do it, sir, I mean, I don't want to say anybody because it a lot was learned. It was a very
Yeah.
long, arduous process fraught with hurdles and challenges to overcome. I think primarily because of who the contractor was, not necessarily the idea of installing a charger. But certainly, anytime that you do something, you're gonna come across things you might not be aware of previously. So, that being said, if we can do it, like, come on, like, we're gonna see so much more of it. And what I think where I want to land with that is that we're going to see more independent, even smaller than regional. I wouldn't even call them networks. Just,
Mhm.
when you've got a gas station that's independently owned and operated, we're going to see them choose to install an EV charger. We're going to see hotels. I mean, we're already seeing hotels, but
Oh yeah.
so many shopping centers that are like, I had somebody call me on the phone asking about installing a charger at their shopping center. Like, we're going to see the chargers leading the public awareness, because when people
Yeah.
see chargers and they see cars plugged into chargers, oh, that's an EV.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, I don't think, what they're going to see driving next to them, but they're going to see what is different. And that's where we can point to something being different than what obviously we're all seeing currently.
That brings up a really good point. I think, yeah, like you say, people aren't going to notice. Well, like I was saying, anyway, the EV driving next to them. But when I was bringing the Spark to you, especially around the DC area, like I was having a hard time finding a charger that was available in certain spots, especially with like the big networks like EV America. I drove up to one with one spot free, and somebody took the last charger right as I was pulling in. I'm like, no!
I
But
waited
anyway,
at an
yeah,
Electrify America station today.
Yeah, there is still a market for EV, even with the existing number of EVs on the road. If no other EVs got sold, there is still a market for EV charging stations. And the more that people see, the more driving EVs becomes normalized, and then they're more likely to say, maybe I should check that out if everybody else is. So that might be the counterpoint to the um, low EV sales due to a fear of the unknown is seeing the chargers and realizing, oh, I can charge. And I'm telling you, the EV America or Electrify America chargers that have the big green lights on them, or the charge point station at the Hyundai dealership near where I live, if those lights are lit and there's cars charging there, then they're pretty visible, and I think that's going to be a great incentive for people to purchase EVs, just knowing that the support is there. We're almost there, I think.
Okay, well, it feels like things are naturally in the conversation kind of reaching what I would call the end of this one. So do either of you have any comments or closing comments or things that you wanted to touch on before we conclude?
Mazda, I want a battery EV Miata, please. That is all.
For me, another like happy, I think, story that's emerging is the price of batteries and manufacturing of those batteries is just precipitously dropping. So I think that's going to just lead to cheaper vehicles and continuing the march towards parity for versus costs of EV cars versus ICE cars. And so
Love that.
um, I think over the next couple of years, it's just going to be dramatic. And if we ever say open our market up to additional options, that's just going to push the price down further. So I think it's still very positive as far as the EV perspective goes.
Yes, I would agree with that on so many levels. Um, where it occurs to me that hybrids still use batteries. There's still a strong need for investment in battery infrastructure, and that will allow the automakers to transition easier to full battery electric, in addition to, of course, the
Yeah.
consumer. So, even if the
Yeah.
consumer wanted only battery electric vehicles, the automakers still need to be the ones that make them profitably at a low price. And if the automakers can't do
Yeah.
that, which I think they are clearly struggling, if they're legacy automakers, clearly struggling to transition themselves, then it almost makes sense that the consumer would not be able to get what they're looking for as much as they might want it. So yeah, it might feel to a lot of people that 2025, especially the second half, has been maybe the step back after two steps forward. But certainly we're still stepping forward. And I think the message that we've driven very, very clearly from all three of us really with this conversation is that, you know what, things might have taken a breath, they might have calmed down a little bit, but that it's not the end, it's really not even the beginning anymore. We're definitely right in the middle, but things are still moving forward, they're still changing and progressing and transitioning to a better world that we can all live in. So for me personally, I am excited that this isn't going away. It's not a fad. It's not just a trendy little thing. And because people are not uh, uh, talking about EVs as being this trendy new thing to get excited about, there's a benefit to that in that the conversation has shifted and now it normalized. And so we just have to figure out how to work within those bounds.
Agreed.
Yep, I agree too.
All right. Well, I got to thank you both for agreeing to hop on. Personally, there was a big part of this that I didn't want to have gone so long without recording and then just hop back into it by myself. So you've been my training wheels for the day. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Yeah, it's so fun to join.
And certainly we'll have to get back to things a little bit more frequently. I want to reassure anybody that has been following EV Resource or my efforts with the podcast that I know I said it before, I'm not going away. And while it might have felt like this year with only 3 published episodes was going away, life happens and things are personally are heading in a very, very good direction. So I intend on getting back to things much more frequently. I've always wanted to be getting back to things much more frequently. And the best is yet to come. You know, there's so much that I'm looking forward to with this industry, especially when you expand to talk about alternative fuels. I have not talked much about hydrogen or propane powered vehicles or even diesel blends or compressed natural gas or synthetic fuels, et cetera, et
All the
cetera, et
things.
cetera. All of those things. There is so much really exciting news coming from all of those sectors as well. So I will be talking more about that. Probably, I don't know if I should say this or not, but probably in a separate podcast that really focuses on that side of things. So lots going on that I haven't shared. So I'm not going away, even though it might have seemed like it. And so I apologize to people that are wanting things more. I want it more as well. And hopefully things will afford for me to have the time to be able to do more, because I love talking about all of this, asking questions, exploring thoughts. And certainly I want to thank you both again for taking the time with me today to ask questions and explore thoughts and talk about this with me, because this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for the invite and having me join you guys. It's always a lot of fun to just kind of nerd out on this stuff. It's my favorite thing to do.
All right. Well, until next time, dear viewer and listener, I'm Zack Hurst. I've been your host, joined by John Hurst and Andy Cooper. And whether it's me alone or the 3 of us or any other combination, we'll see you next time.
See you in 2026.
I really hope you've enjoyed this podcast and want to thank you so much for being here. If you haven't left a review or rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'd really appreciate it. And if you have any feedback for the show, questions for me, or just want to reach out and say hi, you can email me at hello@ev-resource.com. The EV Resource Podcast is a production of EvoSpark Media Group and is supported by viewers and listeners just like you. Supporters of EV Resource on Patreon include, at the director tier, Rajeev, Narayan, and Andy Cooper. To get ad-free episodes of the podcast, free EV Resource merchandise, support recognition, and to join in the community discussion, you can head over to patreon.com/EVResource. I've been your host, Zack Hurst. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you next time.